Hello and welcome, geometry students. Today we're going to be taking on a concept most people do not like very much, and that is proofs. Kind of the easiest way to introduce proofs is algebraically, since most people already know how to go from point A to point B, and it's a good refresher for those that don't. But we're going to start off with algebraic proofs, and then hopefully this will clear things up for once you get into some of the more geometric ones. Let's start with number 2. We're going to do the evens today. The evens never get any love, so let's go ahead and do the evens. Here we have two, let's see, solve each equation, write a reason for each step. Essentially here, what we're going to do is we're just going to solve it like we normally would, but the whole point of proofs is we have statements on the left, and then we have reasons or justifications on the right. So we're just going to kind of, the step-by-step process is going to be shown on the left after each result, and then the reason why we can do that mathematically is displayed. This is a lot more useful for when we have much more complicated scenarios, especially when we get into some of the geometric concepts, but you kind of need to first have established this understanding before you can go on to the more complex things. So let's go ahead and solve it like we normally would. And if we have variables on both sides of the equal sign, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to combine them. So I like to move the smaller one over. I have 28 plus 4x equals negative 4. I'm going to subtract both sides by 28. So I have 4x equals negative 32. I divide by 4, divided by 4 equals x equals negative 8. And that would be my answer. Now, that's just the process of doing it. Hopefully that's just a refresher for you and you understand it. Let's go into how would we write this as a proof. So the first step is we would just rewrite the entire problem, and our reason for being able to state this is given. You have to start with some information. You can't just prove something from nothing. You have to have a start. So this is our start, and now we proceed from here. Now our first step, as we showed, is and let me just write some numbers. Maybe this will help. This is our number 1. Our first step after the given was to subtract 8x from both sides. What did we get after we did that? We got 28 plus 4x equals negative 4. So we went from this starting one, from the given, to number 2. Now, the reason is listed here, right next to it. How did we arrive at this step right here? A lot of people get mixed up of where they put the reason. The reason is, how did we arrive at this row from the previous row? So what led us to the information that we now have for our statement? And this is the, let me use pink, subtraction property of equality. And I like to abbreviate, so prop of ec. Okay, so subtraction property of equality. We subtracted negative 8x to both sides, and that's what led us to that step. Okay, now number 3. Sorry, this is a little confusing with this saying number 1. We should really, okay, hopefully you guys can understand, but this is the first step here. Now the second step, notice how I switched to stars. Okay, the second step, what did we do? Well, we subtracted again. So what did we get after we subtracted? Again, we want just the result of what happened. We got 4x equals negative 32. How did we get to step 3 from step 2? What did we do? Again, we use the same thing. We use the subtraction property of equality. So we're going to go ahead and post that right there. Okay, the last step, we got x equals negative 8. We have our final answer. This is great. How did we arrive at this final answer? We used the division property of equality. So this is pretty straightforward. We're just kind of saying the moves. I like to say it as the moves that we use to get from one spot to another. We just name them, okay? So kind of like, I don't know, like you name moves in karate or something, like front kick, side kick, roundhouse, to get from one spot not beating your opponent to beating your opponent. We want to beat this opponent, so we got to use these different moves in order to beat this opponent. So we used subtraction property. We hit this equation with another subtraction property, and then we hit them with the division property of equality. So that's how we got from this point to proving that x equals -8. Okay, so a little mathematical karate for you. Now we have another problem. Now we have another problem here. Again, we have our statements on the left. We have our reasons on the right. Okay, and we're going from one step to the other. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say -4x plus 10 equals -5x plus 18. This time I'm not going to solve it first because I'm sure you guys don't want more work for yourselves. I'm sure you just want to do this in one swoop. And this is given. Okay, you have to have the given. Givens are always listed first if they're there, and they are there. So the givens we list first. Next step, what would we do? Well, personally, I like to move the variables first, and notice that we have this, and this. Okay, I like to move the smaller one. So how do we move that -5x over? Well, we are going to use the addition property. This is our move, addition prop of equality. Okay, maybe I should number these. So number 1, we had our given. Number 2, we are using the addition property. So we are adding 5x to both sides. What happens when we add 5x? I'm going to erase this in just a second, but for your sake, I'm going to write this, plus 5x plus 5x. We are going to end up with x plus 10 equals 18. Okay, so we're going to erase this plus 5x, copy it down, last chance, 3, 2, 1, okay. And we use the addition property of equality. Now it's a very easy one-step equation from here. Clearly, we recognize that we're going to use the subtraction prop of ek. Okay, and this one was fairly simple. As you can see, we are going to arrive at x equals 8 because we do -10, but of course you don't need that. You see it already, -10. Go ahead and pause it if you want, but x equals 8 is our final answer. Let's do one more. Yeah, let's do one more. Let's try to keep this video short. I'll do this one since it's a little tougher. There's all different possibilities. So don't think that there's only one way to solve these problems. If you have a different order, or if you have more steps, that's fine. I'm trying to show the most efficient way possible. There is more than one possibility that you can have for the statements and reasons. I just list one of the possibilities, okay? So again, we have statements and reasons for this one. This one looks a little bit more complicated, but I'm sure we can do it in a few steps. Statements, reasons. I changed color, didn't mean to, but oh well. First thing we always do is we're going to list the givens. So we have 1/4 x plus 10 equals 2, and this is given. Let's change it to purple. Why not? Given. Okay, now, you could subtract 10, you could do all sorts of things. I like to get rid of the fraction first, so I'm going to use the multiplication property of equality to get rid of this fraction. So I use that. You don't need to do that. There's a different way to do that. That's a little bit easier, but I mean, this is one way to do that. So I use the multiplication property of equality. What happens when I do that? I get x plus 40 equals 8. Okay, so now I am going to subtract 40 from both sides. That's my next move. So I'm going to use the subtraction property of equality. And this should be my last step, actually. So number 3, last step. I think no matter what, I think you have to use 3 moves. So use subtraction property to get x equals -32. So that would be our final answer. I'm trying to think here. Maybe we should go over number 6, but for this one, if you're wondering how to do that, you could, you know what? I need to do this one. You know what? I just really want to make sure we got a grapple on this. I'll do this very quickly. So this is your bonus. So we have -x minus 2 parentheses 9 minus 8x equals 12. Of course, we're going to list this as given. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to distribute. So don't list this as multiplication. Even though you are multiplying here, don't list this as multiplication. Why? Because you're not multiplying by both sides. That's what the multiplication property of equality states, is you multiply by both sides. And we're not multiplying 2 by both sides. We're just using the distributive property. So we have negative x minus 18 plus 16x equals 12. And this is the distributive property. Okay, so the distributive property. That's our move. We didn't multiply, we technically multiplied, but we didn't multiply to both sides, so it's not the multiplication property of equality. Now I would combine like terms, and I tell my class you can just write combine like terms. So we have, sorry, I'm changing colors like 8 times. We have these, so we're going to get 15x minus 18 equals 12, and that is combine like terms. Combine like terms. Okay, I'm actually glad we did this one. It's a little tougher than the other ones. We have a 4th step, and I think we're going to need a 5th step too, number 5. What are we going to do next? We're going to add 18 to both sides to get 15x equals 30, and that is the addition property of equality. And then lastly, we're going to divide both sides by 15, and we get x equals 2, and that is the division property of equality. Division property of equality. Okay, thank you for watching. Thank you for allowing me to do that last one. Hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you next time on Wes Explains Best.